Hey everyone, Aros here, back with the next Lufenia fight, which is for Immediatelion's Lost Chapter. So this is a recurrence of a pretty annoying boss from back in the Chaos era, back when I was still using Gilgamesh to clear through these fights. So I don't really like these Bag Slug enemies much at all, to be perfectly honest with you. So got a lot of annoying effects you need to worry about. The orb is up from battle start with a 12 count. It will disappear when they hit 29% HP and does not come back. It is increased via HP regen via a buff or any sort of healing there that does do persistent regeneration, so that'll give a 3 count to each orb. The bosses absorb earth and holy damage, so you can't really bring along Paladin Cecil for this one. Gal, who would be another one you could use for countering a lot of their attacks, can't bring him either, so your counter options, if you wanted to go with that strategy, are Gladio and Sellers. They have a high resistance to range type damage, so again, not long after Aranea got her LD, they really don't want her coming along for a lot of these fights, so it should be the key sort of premier ranged unit to bring. Trey, I guess, as well would be another one, seeing as he's very good at the moment too with his LD. When the bosses in this fight target themselves early on, so you'll notice this at right at the start of the fight, they will use a sort of buff called Mucus Space, and gross sounding, I know, but what it does is it will make your team members delay themselves. So everyone in your party will delay after every action they take. So if you use any skill, AA, a call ability, EX, doesn't matter what it is other than sort of burst, because then that gives them the 6 consecutive turns, and it doesn't matter what happens with those, they will get delayed. So what sort of happens is you need to take this into account, and this is sort of the major part about this fight that I really don't like, is dealing with that delay. If you manage to delay or delete the bosses though at the start of the fight and drop their health down, you can keep them from taking turns long enough, if you can, until they hit 79% HP, and then the Mucus Space will get applied no matter what. You can't stop it from being done. The devs clearly thought about that one and stopped that from being a cheese strategy for getting through this one. The other mechanic that you really need to be aware of is in case that they do, which I still think is a typo in game. I think it says INCASE, which isn't the word they want when the sort of slug's pulling itself into its nest. It should be N-case, I would think. But anyway, so they will only use this attack after they sort of target themselves and do a bravery only all attack, or after you've taken a certain number of turns. I'm not entirely sure, couldn't find in my research how many turns it is you have to take before they do it, but what happens is they will get a massive bravery gain, so battering themselves for a lot. They will get a lot of defense, like a lot of the turtles and other enemies you fight that go into like a shell, their defense goes way up, and they get a massive physical brave damage reduction. So with all of these things combined, you'll notice that this being an event that's on Terra's BT banners, and Immediatelion's also a magic user, and Deuce, whose LD is also on this banner, is also a magic user. This is a fight that really wants you to bring along magic damage dealers, and the last thing about this boss is you need to kill them both roughly around the same time, or on the same turn as your best bet if you can, as if you leave one of them alive, it will apply Mucus Space plus, and then that delays 2 turns every time you take an ability. So that's a lot harder to deal with than just the 1 turn delay. Okay, so team building for this fight. Like I said, magic-based damage is really what you want to bring along, so I went for a team with no tank, went for a full magic damage team, so you can see I've got in this team comp Ultimecia with her burst weapon. Probably wouldn't have brought her if I had Terra's burst weapon, but I don't, so bringing along Ultimecia for a burst, get some turn delay in, really try and push those Bag Slugs back a lot so that you get more consecutive turns. Pairing her up with Terra is a really good use of those 2 units in this fight, as when, say, Ultimecia uses her EX and does Apocalypse and gets her 3 consecutive turns, when she takes the first turn she's just going to get delayed, and then those 3 turns are going to be later in the turn order. But if you have Terra's LD buff, their Chaos Wave, their Loving Heart up, so she's got the 4 consecutive free turns, and you use one of her turns like immediately after, or say right before, so she'll have like the 4 turns there, and then Ultimecia uses her EX, and this is really hard to visualize without something on screen, so I apologize. But if you use Ultimecia's EX, she'll jump behind Terra's 4 turns, so when Terra uses one of her 4 turns, her 3 turns will then jump behind Ultimecia's 3 turns, and you can have them keep jumping over each other and basically leapfrogging their way down the turn track. Rather than taking all 3 up front, or all 4 up front, it would be, say, Terra's got the 4, and then you use Ultimecia's EX. It would then go Terra, Ultimecia, Terra, Ultimecia, Terra, Ultimecia down the line. So that's a good use of those 2 in this fight. And then as a Aura bot, a good support, someone with some good shave, also synergy unit which helps with this, and her LD buff is great, is Deuce, who I've brought along for this fight as well. She's here to provide a lot of auras, battery, some shaving with her LD buff and her LD attack, as well as, you know, using her EX is a good shave as well in this fight, and just all around trying to use her to just do as much bravery damage as possible when the in case happens and everything like that. That pretty much covers the 3 units I've got. The other thing I'd want to just talk about quickly is the calls that I used. So obviously, all magic team, a great use for a call is to bring along Hope, so his purification buff and making magic vulnerability go up. Great for this team comp, so used that. Gabranth is another good one. His debuffs can really help with just making sure the bosses don't break you too often, don't do too much damage, plus increased bravery damage against them is very useful for trying to get through the encase phases. And lastly, obviously, Jack with his LD call is fantastic as always, increased bravery damage and just sort of racks up over time. As always, you want to use that one before burst phases on a burst unit or someone that's going to get a turn before a burst unit, so you can get as much out of that as possible, stack it as quickly as you can. And for my friend unit for this one, I brought along Ramza. His BT buff with the amount of buffs going around with Deuce, Terra, Ultimecia, Ramza himself. Plenty of buffs there, plenty of bonus out of his burst, aura to get the increased bravery damage and HP damage, so very useful there. Additionally, his LD ability, I can't think what it's called now. The LD ability has got being a launch and delay. These bosses aren't immune to launch, so launch is a good way to get extra damage on them, and the delay also helps. Even if he does, you know, himself get delayed, you can kind of push them back, and then you get pushed back, and you can try and force them down the turn track that way. Same with delete with Ultimecia. You delete them, Ultimecia gets pushed down, but their turns don't exist, so they're further down the track, and you can kind of use that as a way of dealing with them as well. For summon, I went with Ramuh. Increased bravery is really good. His level 40 summon ability being that framed paralysis buff, debuff that's not called paralysis and doesn't count as a paralysis debuff. Not that it's relevant to this fight, but there's so many fights where it's like, they're immune to paralysis. Ramuh's debuff still works in those fights, so just worth keeping in mind for future encounters and things like that. But that is very useful to make it so when they do have a turn coming up, that turn does not count. And that can take a lot of, you know, the sting out of those guys getting, the Bag Slugs getting multiple turns in a row. So something to keep in mind there. Ramuh's very, very useful for that. One of the 2 level 40 summons we've got, obviously, so they're both very good because they also do HP damage as well as part of the summon phase. Yeah, not too much else to say. I'd say for this fight, just as a general sort of strategy, like I said, magic damage is key. You want some sort of delay or delete. You need HP regen, obviously, to deal with them. The other strategy is, of course, to go full counter and hope that you've got units with good dodge and stuff like that to deal with counter. Gladio's great for that. Sellers, again, great for countering if you want to go for a full counter team comp. Gladio also has the HP regen, so that counters the orb. I'd say 8 probably is a third. No, that doesn't really work with Gladio. I mean, you could still go with 8 Sellers Gladio as a team. Furion would be another good option because he's got the after turn LD and that also does healing. Not really like a counter unit, but still could probably work for that one. So there's an idea if you want to go for a full counter team. Otherwise, I can't think of too much else you'd want to do, except maybe a similar sort of magic team comp and bring a tank. If I had Terra's burst weapon, like I said earlier, I probably would have just brought her with her burst weapon instead of Ultimecia's burst, and then brought a Metatelian in place of Ultimecia for this fight. Her delete's great, more support units, debuffs galore, you know, would have been really good for this fight, and was in the challenge quests, which I'll get to next. So yeah, if you've got any questions, you need any help with this fight, any sort of thing I can do to help, if you want to get my friend ID or anything like that so you can borrow any of my units that you need or anything, feel free to leave a comment down below. Otherwise, thank you for watching and enjoy the rest of the video.
DFFOO です。滅びの光を。魔導よ、降り注いで。これは裁きよ。コンチェルトはこれは裁きよ。
臆病者だ。それでも迷いはしない。
そなたにしましょう。やってみせる。お願い、力を貸して。
僕に任せろ。魂を引き出す。はあ、虚空を貫け。
やってみせる。遠慮はしません。魔導よ、この豪華で。レクイエムです。魔導よ、この豪華で。魔導よ、降り注いで。
魂を引き出す。はあ、虚空を貫け。
やってみせる。遠慮はしません。魔導よ、降り注いで。遠慮はしません。そなたにしましょう。魔導よ、この豪華で。
魂を引き出す。はあ、虚空を貫け。
やってみせる。遠慮はしません。魔導の刃よ。
トリプルブレイク。
遠慮はしません。やってみせる。レクイエムです。
刻め。
そなたにしましょう。お願い、力を貸して。
滅びの光を。
魔導よ、この豪華で。
これは裁きよ。
魔導よ、この豪華で。
無に帰りなさい。
魔導よ、降り注いで。
刻め。
魔導よ、この豪華で。奏でます。セレナーデ。これで終焉です。それ。
滅びの光を。これは裁きよ。
魔導の刃よ。
来い。目に物見せる。これは裁きよ。
奏でます。セレナーデ。これで終焉です。
時空よ、沈め。
クイエムです。
無に帰りなさい。
魔導よ、降り注いで。そなたにしましょう。
滅びの光を。
魔導よ、この豪華で。
これは裁きよ。これは裁きよ。これは裁きよ。
やってみせる。魔導よ、この豪華で。